Last night, they did it. Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs and Arsenal actually did the unthinkable and signed their names up to a European Super League as founder members. Now, this is a move that is set to blow apart English football as we know it. How will this arrogant power grab end? Simon, I've pre-recorded a quick chat with Arsene Wenger, who was on the move this morning. You're going to be very keen to hear from him about, when does that look? 10:30 for Arsene Wenger. So hold your horses for that. He was on the move. He's actually travelling, but he said, sure, I'll speak to you about it, and does. What's your take on this, Simon? Give me your gut reaction to where this is going to go.
It's a load of old tosh. It's the same thing being repackaged with a little bit more substance behind it in order to create downward pressure on what UEFA are trying to do, which is reformat the Champions League and do it in a way that distributes money on a certain basis. Look, of course, there's an argument that says this is absolutely morally wrong and bankrupt and 6 clubs do not run English football. But there is also another argument which says, and people won't like to hear it, that these 6 clubs are the reasons why the broadcasters such as your mob over at Sky and overseas broadcasters around the world have paid the money that they have. The Big Six, self-anointed Big Six, which is laughable with the makeup of some of them, because a few years ago some of them wouldn't have even been in the mix, have been given far too much power for far too long. It started 3 years ago with Richard Scudamore's parting gift to his tenure as Premier League chairman was to say, I'll tell you what, I'm going to bend over backwards and allow you guys to take a bigger proportion of the overseas revenue. And when the 14 clubs in the Premier League voted for that, rather than turning around to the so-called Big Six, which are on the whole run by Americans now, and the reasons why relegation and things that are on the table want to be taken off the table because the Americans don't like that model, should have told them to do one then, but they didn't, and they reap what they sow. Underneath all this, when we talk about greed, where is this greed? The greed that we're talking about is having to fuel a ravenous beast, which is the cost implications of running football clubs and player salaries. We've sat here for a year watching football bleed out of its eyes while player salaries go up. Where's this money going to go? Where's this money going to go? It's not going to happen. It's going to give UEFA a bloody nose and start concentrating people's minds about the reality of how UEFA operate. And when we sit here and we suddenly start waxing out the idea that UEFA and FIFA are governing bodies that are the harbingers of the moral temperature. These two organisations are the most corrupt, divisive, disingenuous bunch of slobs that we've ever laid eyes on. Look at how they run. FIFA have got their nose put out of joint because they're trying to build a FIFA World Club Championship. They want to expand their tournament. This is wrong. It needs to be put to stop, and it will be stopped.
It will be stopped.
But what will change is the notion that the UEFA control the distribution of money to these clubs. UEFA get 3.3 billion a year for the Champions League. You realise that, don't you? 3.3 billion, that's more than the Premier League gets. And they distribute it how they decide. These 6 clubs, or 6 other clubs alongside them, and by the way, when we get into the mix of this, Jim, how are we going to get the Germans involved? The Germans have got a fan model which they own 51% of clubs. So if the fans vote for that, then the German clubs want to do it. How are you going to get Madrid and Barcelona really involved, because the socios that control those clubs have got to vote for this? What about the Dutch clubs and the Belgian clubs that are part of the European elite as well? Because they've just formed a new league called the Benelux League. How is this going to happen, really? What it is robust, Simon, bloody nosing.
Right on cue. What about the Germans? Borussia Dortmund in the last minute have just announced that they will not be joining the Super League.
They probably weren't asked.
They say the clubs want to implement the planned reform in UEFA Champions League. The plans to found a Super League have been rejected by us at Dortmund, so they're saying no to it. Danny.
Can I just simplify something for a lot of people listening? Because a lot of people are getting confused, reading a lot of people not really understanding it. I think I'm right in saying, and what you're saying, Simon, is this: it's a bit of a power play from the Big Six.
Of course it's a power play.
To say, look, you get 3.3 billion for the Champions League. This is to UEFA.
Yeah.
We want more of that. We want more control of that. And is ultimately what you're saying, the goal for the Big Six is to get more of a negotiating tool or more of a chair at the table with UEFA in distributing this 3.3
But it's also a little bit more sinister than that to some extent. What they want is they want all the benefits of collective bargaining, right? They want to take all the... When you're in football, you have a collective responsibility. Transfers have to be paid. If people want to buy a player on the drip, they can pay him over 3 years because of the creditor policy in football. So they want that benefit, but then they want to take their individual media rights and say, boom, we are the reasons why Sky and BT pay this kind of money and the overseas companies. So we want to leverage that. You've got 14 other clubs in the Premier League that have got to sit back and say to these guys, well, go on then. OK, here we go, Man United. If we kick you out of the Premier League, it's going to hurt us. It's going to hurt you too, because you get 150 million quid from the Premier League and distributions. You can kiss goodbye to that, right? You can also kiss goodbye to a proportion of the gate receipts that you get from UK fans, because you're not going to play as many games in Europe if you're out of the Premier League. And the EFL are not going to take you, like the idea that the EFL will take Man United, because collectively the football fraternity should club together. This is about positioning themselves, getting involved with the sentiment of how do we leverage money. And they're also looking at a landscape going, think about it, Danny. The 12 clubs that we're talking about lost £1.2 billion in the year before the COVID crisis has even hit. So Christ knows what they're going to lose this year. Who's going to pay for this? They're trying to find ways to rinse more money out of football, right? Because the problem that everyone has got and no one wants to deal with is player salaries and financial governance. And people like Keir Jaraption pop out of the ether and say, people that own football clubs should be able to do what they want. The problem is, yes, they should, but those that can affect those that can't, and they drive the price up for everybody. So this is about the economics of being able to monetize football. It's done by Americans. Look at it. Every single club we're really talking about, Joel Glazer, the irony of that is probably the person that owns the club that he's put the least amount of money in because he got it on other people's money, as the VP of this particular mechanism. Then you've got Arsenal, owned by Americans. Then you've got Liverpool, owned by Americans. Then you've got Chelsea, controlled by American influence, which is Bruce Buck. Yeah. This is all about Americans controlling the World Series of football. What does the World Series look like in America? Teams only playing American teams.
I have to say, you want to hear some of the comments we're getting from fans. Brandon's a Chelsea fan. Jim, I'm a massive Chelsea fan, a football fan. I love my family. If a member committed murder, then I'd turn my back on them. My club will murder football if this goes ahead. Don't do it. Don't do it, says Brandon. Simon, this is more than posturing. It's more than posturing, isn't it?
No, it's absolute positioning. If you're going to negotiate,
it has to be. Ed Woodward, before we came on air, resigned from the European Club Association.
Simon, if it's just positioning, it's a hell of a lot of effort.
Yeah, of course it is.
And a lot of commitment and finance.
If you really want finance to structure a league that's got nothing behind it right now, to go and get JP Morgan that are clamping at the bit to be able to do financial deals in football that will run like whatever you think.
If it doesn't cost money, then to set up the whole idea.
A mechanism, right? So if you mean something, right, what you do is you start with a deal which is so outrageous that you actually get what you really want by positioning yourself in the most strident fashion. We're going to take your pants down, we're going to smack your bottom, and we're going to hand you back nothing, right? Oh, hang on a second, you're going to push back a little bit. Okay, we'll take a little bit less and we'll have a little bit of a negotiation. But this is a really robust... If I was in their shoes and I had their mindset, I'd be doing this too. I'd be saying, I've asked you nicely. I've told you that we want to do a different deal with UEFA. We don't like you, UEFA. You're not a very good organisation. You're a crap organisation, and so are FIFA, right? And we don't like your distribution mechanisms. We don't like all the coefficients that you deploy currently. We want more money, right? And why do we want more money? Because all the money currently in football, people talk about the idea of football, and I was listening to it on the radio this morning about football and the sentiment of our pure game. That died. This is like the Monty Parrot sketch, Monty Python parrot sketch. It's an ex-parrot.
This parrot is dead.
There is no more loyalty and decency in football, Jim. It's all about money.
Yeah.
And the reasons why it's all about money is because the players are being paid too much money. The broadcasters have given the football too much money, and there's no governance and control. And this is the Wild West exhibiting itself.
Well, what we do know is UEFA are going to hold a briefing this afternoon, so goodness only knows what we're going to expect from that. But remember, these clubs, Simon, are getting 300 mil a time to join this thing, so no wonder they're flapping their eyelids at it, giving it, yeah, sure, we're in. We're in, but so many people getting in touch this morning, Danny. Mel in Chesterfield. Guys, I'm listening to Simon. I'm a big Manchester United fan. I am so disgusted at the thought of this Super League and that every fan of the so-called Big Six, I'm bound to feel the same. We're going to take your calls this morning about 10:30. So get ready. You can come to air live with myself, Simon, and Danny. 08717 223344. That's 08717 223344.